Welcome back to the table, friends. I am your humble host, GreyDMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hello.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, so you're a vampire, now what?
Good question.
All right. So now that we've got the broad strokes of the game down, we're going to start talking about what life is like as an actual vampire and what you need to know to start your kindred life. So I guess we can start off with the violence has happened already.
Yeah.
The embrace occurred, however that happened for your character. That's all in the past. You're now in a unique situation.
Mm-hmm.
You have agency over your body, but your body is not living anymore.
And even saying you have agency over your own body is a stretch.
You are one of two entities that have agency over your body. That's a good point. So you now inhabit this meat husk, this rotting dead meat husk with a creature known as the beast. This is the side of you that wants to feed. This is the side of you that wants to feed on something very specific and prevents you from not feeding on it or from trying to go about with a moral.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the whole vegetarian, vegan, meat eater thing where it's just like, no, I don't want to eat meat, but it's so good. And sometimes you just got to have a cheeseburger.
So as you can already guess, being a vampire, you need to consume blood. This is just part of your unlife from now on, your afterlife. This is a fact that you cannot escape. And in some way, shape, or form, you are going to have to wrestle with it until you cease to exist, until you find your own end to this period of your life.
So do you think, certain people have their own homebrew rules for things and like that? Do you think there's anybody that has we don't like the idea of having to drink blood. We're kind of against that. So we've developed this soy-based blood alternative.
I 100% believe that someone has taken the balls away from vampire and is basically okay. So we also know that people have a tendency to take the merit baby teeth and they all want to drink from blood bags.
I don't know anybody that would do that. Personally, I would never.
So being that this is a core part of the game, right? Your character wants blood and not from some biological need to feed on iron or to satiate some virus that's in your system. Your character is essentially animated from dead flesh by the power of life in that blood. So
sounds pleasant.
So this is going to be a core part of your character's pursuits from now on. You need to find a way that satisfies your character's inner morality struggles and also satisfies this beast, this urge that's inside you that will lead you down a very dark path if you don't satiate it. So getting control over this, whether that's finding an avenue to get a steady supply of blood or finding a type or a hunting method that allows you to, safely interface with the people and get the thing you need. This will allow you to basically satiate or at least suppress the beast so that you can do things like visit people you care about without ripping their throats out or not go home and chew your wife up. Unless she wants it.
Unless she wants. Do I have consent to tear you to pieces?
No, okay. So feeding consists of, vampires basically have built-in features that allow them to do this. It's nothing fancy. You have fangs. The fangs allow you to purchase the flesh.
Puncture?
Gotcha. Puncture the flesh. You drink blood, but you do have some handy adaptions. One of them is that if you lick the wound, those wounds tend to heal pretty quickly and leave no mark.
That's good. You don't want obvious signs that, you've been feeding on people.
No, just a little anemic. That's about it.
Just anemia. Have a cookie. They just need a cookie.
Here's a cookie and a juice. You also, the kiss, the act of drinking from a person, tendency, unless you're specific vampire lineage, has a tendency to release endorphins in that person to inspire a state of euphoria.
So they kind of don't remember what's happening.
Exactly. Oftentimes they have pleasant memories of hooking up with that person from the bar and just being confused as they don't have a lot of energy the next day.
That makes sense.
You can feed, some vampires can feed on things like blood bags, ways of storing blood, sometimes needing extra process steps, and even the blood of animals, but it's never going to be as potent. It's never going to be as satisfying as a human. And it will never completely satiate you unless you drain the last drop and consume the life of the person you're feeding on. So your beast is always going to be wanting that final consumption. And only then, in that moment, will you get a brief reprise, a quieting, even so temporarily, of this voice that drives you to feed.
So is there a repercussion for doing that?
For
draining the last drop?
Well, since your unlife is a struggle with your own personal morality, that is going to be a pretty big hit, and you're going to have to find a way to justify it. So
it's kind of a storyteller option to basically explore that moment with the person, the realization like you just killed this person just because you were hungry.
Absolutely. And that could lead to a degradation of that character's sanity, or at least a lessening of that character's humanity. So yeah, so literally this comes into a metric of your character's humanity, a stat that your character has that shows how far you've, or maybe how far you haven't fallen from the state of pre-death and how far you have, yeah, it's weird.
No, pre-death. I mean, yes. That seems accurate.
Basically, did you give into the beast or not? So you got a spectrum of like the beast and Mr. Rogers, and where are you in that? Now, this actually,
Mr. Rogers as a vampire. That's a good concept.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you got to go, that's the way to do it. Like Hush, Little Whispered, bury your head in that fuzzy sweater,
cardigan sweater,
cardigan sweater.
You are special.
Yeah, humanity does actually have other effects of a vampire too. So part of wrestling around with the aspects of your curse is related to how much humanity you have. So vampires that have a tendency of holding on to their humanity, of basically maintaining it through the use of touchstones from their mortal life, they suffer some of the curses of vampirism less than vampires who give into the beast, specifically when trying to rouse the blood from torpor, healing from aggravated damage, which also involves going into torpor, and suffering some of the other various stranger aspects of the curse.
So aggravated damage, what was that?
Oh, this is another good perk. So ever since your heart stopped, it doesn't really matter how your body takes damage, aside from maybe chemical burns or fire. Your body doesn't function anymore like a normal. So if you get shot, it's no different than you getting hit with a baseball bat. The blood binds and knits the matter of your form back together. So healing from a gunshot is no worse than healing from a needle prick or, bruise to the leg. Your body isn't bound by the anatomy and the function of human existence.
So like, what if you break a bone or something?
Well, the blood still animates your corpse. Now, you may not have the structure to lean on that appendage anymore, but hey, a little rousing of the blood can heal things pretty quick.
So that's like, you said like getting hit with a baseball bat or getting shot, but like, what about like, you said like fire does something more? So
now we talk about substantial damage, I believe is the term in the new version. It used to be called aggravated damage. This is damage that fundamentally alters the physicality of your being. So basically like on the chemical level, on the molecular level, or magically. And that's not so easy to heal. So that involves an extended period of time for you to shed those wounds and restore your previous form. So as a vampire, you are resilient. You can take a incredible amount of this non-substantial or...
It's like it was always bashing, slashing, and then it's aggravated damage was the biggest one. Right. I get that.
It's 2 levels now. It's superficial.
Gotcha.
Sorry, superficial damage is the current classification. So superficial damage, which for vampires includes things like gunfire or like getting hit by a truck.
Those are 2 very similar things.
So you can imagine that the ability for your body to withstand that damage, essentially, you can take all of that in superficial damage, and then you can take it again in superficial damage before you actually get to the point that you're going under into torpor, which is a recovery state, or essentially almost a form of
healing
non-existence.
coma almost.
Yeah. In torpor, your body is a dead body, and your spirit essentially is healing, using the power of the blood to recover from whatever form you're in, whether it's just to go to sleep and wake up the next night, or it's to recover the loss of a limb after a fight with a particular angry dog that walks on two legs.
Walks on 2 legs.
So yeah, the undeadhood has a lot of advantages. You're not limited to the physicality that you once had. So things like strength, speed, these things are going to go out the window. They don't need an athlete's body in order to gain the speed of a top runner. All you need really is blood to power you to get you really motivated to pump up the dead flesh into doing something. One of the other powers that blood has is that you can rouse it to gain the blush of life.
Oh.
And unfortunately, this is pretty much the closest you're going to be to ever being human again. So using the blush of life, you can turn on your systems for a brief period of time and blush, feel,
breathe,
even breathe, blink. I mean, you could manually blink.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This costs blood points to blink your eyes.
I'm gonna have to top off when I leave.
I blunk twice.
So you can do this for periods of time at the expenditure of blood, which means you're going to be more hungry and you're going to need to go out there and you're going to need to feed again, which is really great for, avoiding those situations where some pesky human is looking around thinking that you might be acting kind of weird. But it does not change what you are. If you do try to ingest something during this period of time, you're going to throw it right back up.
Oh, awesome.
Sometimes all over the table with blood. Your body is going to go back, as a vampire, your body is going to try its best to go back to the state in which you were turned.
Mm-hmm.
That's your new default state, for better or for worse. So
does that mean like if a child gets turned, they're always a child?
They do not grow because growing is something that humans do.
Wow.
That also means that if you're really, really a good vampire, a really stand-up kind of person, you probably want to take a person to the barber.
Yeah, give them a nice haircut.
Nice haircut, get all clipped up, maybe.
Give them a mullet.
Yeah, then sign the curse of immortality onto their dead, lifeless corpse.
So what if someone's like really old and feeble when they get turned?
Once again, so your body doesn't need to be physically responsible for your actions. You can use the blood and the supernatural nature of its power to accomplish great things you would never be able to do, previously. If you were turned as an old man, hey, you don't suffer from achy joints or arthritis or anything like that. Those are all human conditions. You are now an animated meat puppet.
But you still look old.
Yes. You don't get the glamour shot of the Interview with a Vampire. Like, you're not suddenly sexy and sparkly. Now, sometimes you're chosen because you were before, and sometimes you can be supernaturally attracted to people. Those things are possible.
Or you can be a supermodel and be chosen by someone that doesn't like that you're a supermodel.
The curse of vampirism affects each vampire differently, and some groups, some clans, some lineages suffer worse than others. So, speaking of which, depending on your sire's lineage, you are likely to be exhibiting the traits of a particular clan, a particular lineage that dates back to one of a founding sect of vampires who were, legend says, 3rd generation from Cain. So they were the children of Cain's 3 children, the antediluvians. Now, these were the big shots. These are the mythical basically god level like beings who rose up and consumed their sires and founded the modern clans. So you gain a piece of their potential, often in the form of disciplines that are passed down from clan member to clan member. So, for example, you might be really good at telling people what to do. Or, very similarly, you might be really good at just people wanting to do whatever you want them to do. Obvious true things are you can be strong, you can be fast, you can talk to animals, you can be invisible for all intentional purposes, or just have everybody think you are.
Well, how does that work?
Well, vampires like to mess with people's heads a lot, so what's better than actually physically being invisible or just convincing everybody you are never there, regardless of any type of evidence to the contrary?
I think I have that superpower.
Yeah, anybody who's tried to impress someone that they had a crush on and just never got noticed has probably had that level of that superpower. So disciplines give you a set of skills to tackle the night with. You can use them to feed, you can use them to fend off other vampires, or you can use them to deal with those pesky humans that are trying to, burn out anything that might be a danger to them. Ooh.
They don't know what's good for them.
But that does get into the first real complication of being a vampire, aside from feeding other vampires.
Oh, no. So you're telling me that all these problems we have as humans and disagreeing with each other and not getting along continue once we become vampires?
No, they all go away and everybody lives a happy, rosy rose glass colored life.
I love this game.
Yeah, no. Vampires are petty. Vampires they sit around for all their immortality, and really the only thing they need to do is acquire food. So once they do that, they sit around and think of ways to fuck each other over. They have come up with some strange and complex strategies to do so.
That doesn't sound right.
So as a vampire in a growing awareness of your place in the night, unless you're out in the boonies, into a population that really couldn't have supported a vampire population to begin with, you're probably going to find yourself in the location of someone more powerful than you in their domain, their area of control, or their area of their territory. Now, depending on this person, depending on this vampire, they could belong to a sect that has a rigid class-like system with rules and complex traditions that get enforced, such as the Camarilla. They could be with a reasonable group of ruffians who just like to make sure everybody's not fucking with each other. And, they basically trade favors and just try to make sure that everyone's allowed to hold on to what are their own. Or they could be religious zealots who like to feed on anybody who is older generation than them and consume them.
That one. I like that one.
No bias. So these are the three current or classic vampire sects that we are going to talk about: the Camarilla, the Anarchs, and the Sabbat. Now, although we'll go deeper down the road talking about these, to give you a brief idea of them, the Camarilla is essentially the people in power and the people who have been in power. It's a bunch of vampires who have maintained a rigid kind of class hierarchy system. They believe that there are ascended clans and lower clans.
Basically the aristocracy.
Absolutely. They generally rule a city with a hierarchy that starts at a prince and goes down until the bottom feeders, where you are, have no say whatsoever.
The fledglings.
So in the Camarilla, you're gonna gain some benefits. One, you're going to have a hierarchy of people who will try to make sure everybody's following the rules. Also, they're going to break the rules whenever they want to because they're in charge.
Yeah.
So you tend to have, if invaders come in from other sects and people come in and try to destroy the basis of power for the people who are currently in that position, at least you're not solely responsible for fending off the wolves, so to speak.
But you might be put on the front lines.
Oh, absolutely. After all, what are, the peons for if not to sacrifice?
That's right.
So the Anarchs are a collection of, people from some of the clans in particular that think that stuff's kind of bullshit. So they basically define themselves in a loose structure. Usually a baron takes over a territory, and the people within that territory report to him. He is usually the baron. He or she is usually the baron because they can control the territory. So, and struggles will absolutely happen because there is not a rigid hierarchy of structure, but there is, an understanding of
might makes right.
Yeah. And, once you scrap a few times with your fellow barons, you kind of get an understanding, a mutual respect for each other. And people are going to kind of, they won't let bygones be bygones, but they're going to kind of wait until they see a show of weakness.
Right.
However, as anarchs, there's one thing that unites them more than anything else, which is if the camera will come in and try to take their turn.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. So it's one of those.
Yeah. And finally, there is the Sabbat. And the Sabbat have ideals. Ideals and fears that they need to uphold and try to wrestle with. And that informs them and their ideology. They are somewhere between the boogeymen and the corrupt politicians at church, political figures.
Okay.
Yeah, we will go into them in more depth, but let's just say that it
so you're saying it's a group of people with, strong religious ideals.
It's a part of it. That's a very core part of it. Let's put it this way. If you have arisen to your new state as a vampire within the Camarilla, you are going to spend a great deal of time at the bottom. But there is a path with backstabbing and political motivations or movements that could arrive you at a position where you may be comfortable in the future. The anarchs, you start punching the right people, you impress the right people, and maybe you'll make a place for yourself. The Sabbat, they generally, the first thing they do after they turn you is they basically throw you in a hole and cover you with dirt.
Oh.
If you are strong enough to claw your way out, then maybe you're someone that they might want to drag around on their next murder or homicide. Now, if you survive a week or two as the Sabbat, maybe they'll start talking ideology. There are also a couple lost, forgotten, or purged fans out there that we won't talk about yet. We'll dive into, because they deserve their own videos. Honestly, we're their own podcasts, sessions.
But those are clans, not really an ideology.
Correct. Yeah. So you're going to find yourself in one of these positions. Hopefully, we'll assume that you're in the position of, let's say, the Camarilla. Right? So what kind of advice do you have for a fledgling vampire? Looking out, let's say you've conquered your feeding issues. Well, maybe you're feeding on someone else's stock, but let's say you know how to feed.
Okay. And you want to know, next steps?
Yeah.
Probably find out whose turf you're on. Maybe, depending upon who your sire is, if they've even introduced themselves to you, if you just woke up like that, you don't really know. But yeah, from there, probably introduce yourself. Start to get your name out there and let people know that you exist and you're more than willing to follow the rules and start at the bottom. But you don't really want to start stepping on toes right away, because I feel like the Camarilla are the type of people that just be like, Jimmy who? And Jimmy never existed. There's just a pile of ash.
100%. I think we did gloss over a few things I like to go back and touch on. So you probably have a sire.
Yeah.
That's a whole issue that I kind of didn't go into. So your sire is the vampire who created you. They killed you. So this is an important part of creation. So make no mistake, you may grow to love or carry your sire all you want, but they made the decision to turn you into the beast that you are.
And it was a conscious decision for them. It's generally very rarely something that happens by accident.
Yeah. In the modern game, this is actually represented as having to spend a willpower, specifically a resource you have, into the act of creation of a vampire. So you were chosen for a reason. And maybe it's just to get out of a quick bind, or maybe you were chosen by someone who sees something in you, something that they once had or once enjoyed or fancied. But you are going to probably have a relationship with this person unless they get killed in the first few days of your unlife.
I mean, it happens.
It does happen. One of the things that can happen between a vampire and a childer is the vampire can have you feed on their blood, your sire.
Mm.
And this can lead to the creation of what's called as the blood bond.
Oh.
So in the vein of blood being the thing that you are consumed over, feeling it being the only thing that lets you get a taste back of what it was like to be human. Not all blood is equal.
Oh, really?
And specifically, even between mortals, some people have discerning palates, and they want a higher class meal than just the hobo in the alley. There are people who prefer academic pedigree. There are people who prefer nobility. There are people who prefer the creation of a subset of feelings in the person that they're feeding from so that they can feel those things again. Some people just want a quick high, and the only way as a vampire to do that is to get your subject high and then feed from them. But all vampires can pretty much agree that there are other types of blood out there that have a different kick.
Oh. So, like, just the elite of humans, what you're saying?
It gets better than that.
Really?
For example, there are people in this world who have grown to their awareness and become something different, mages. And mage blood can do wondrous things to a vampire to awaken the senses. It's a wonderful mixture of psychedelics and an expanding of the mind. For those who want to get their burn on at the gym, I would recommend the werewolf variety. Talking about a mixture filled with adrenaline and rage. But if you want the potent of potency, you want the true aged wine or, old scotch on the shelf, then you're going to be looking for vampire blood.
Oh, no. You're not saying that vampires go after each other in that way, too.
Yes. So this is one of the number one sins of vampirism if you complete the urge and finish the process. But if you drink the blood of another vampire, you develop an emotional bond with that vampire. If this happens over the course of a period, usually I think it's 3 times, this bond increases to the point of fortifying into a blood bond, a dependency, an emotional dependency that you have over this person.
That sounds convenient.
This is very convenient. It's often exploited in the sire-child relationship. Now,
they would do that?
Oh. Yeah, well, like I said, they have a lot of time on their hands and ways to torture people. Now, if the drinking instead were to continue and were to reach the point at which the victim vampire were to be drained of all their vitae and die, their soul is drained as well.
I didn't know that, like, they fit in a straw sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a metaphorical straw.
Oh, okay.
Metaphysical, maybe?
Metaphysical? Yeah, I don't know.
This is the act of diablerie, and this is the biggest sin
sounds
for
like a
vampires.
bad word.
You could go in and wipe out a police department or an orphanage, and most vampires won't bat an eye as long as it doesn't come back to them. 2 different extremes.
It's happened. I mean, it's just
this is all from personal experience. I mean, you can do these things as long as it doesn't lead back to the vampires in power. Most of the time they don't really care. But if you kill another predator, that means that you are a danger to them, and this cannot be allowed. Those who do commit such a crime they suffer a few things. They do grow more powerful, but then they will always know the allure of committing a diablerie and wanting to do it again. And then usually they exhibit some sort of sign for a period of time. Oftentimes black veins or definitely marks in their aura, so that other vampires on the lookout will be able to tell that you committed this most heinous of all sins. Not likely to have a good conversation with the prince if you've got diablerie marks in your veins. Even though you might be looking for another snag.
I think that's something that we ourselves have never had happen much in our games. Our early games, it seemed like it happened every 5 minutes. And there was no real repercussion for it. But once we kind of got hold of our own, subset of playing, it didn't really happen that much.
Yeah, maybe. Wonder why. I think we tend to play games where most of the other vampires are more powerful to start with. And then also, because of the people that we ended up playing with later on, most of the time our players didn't leave each other that often.
Yeah, true.
You know, and vampirism or diablerie is not something you're going to generally do in front of your friends.
No. I mean, the way I've always looked at it too is a lot of the characters that I've played have always been, at least in Vampire, they've been pretty sociable people. And I just feel like that would be a very difficult thing to kind of talk your way out of.
Yes. I think the characters who would have found themselves in the situation where that type of thing would have happened usually did not have the wherewithal to
go through with it.
Yeah, understand it or be in a position of power at all. They usually either were beaten into torpor or just hung out with a bunch of scary dudes.
Yeah. I mean, there's one person in particular that really had the chances, and it would have been an interesting route if he had taken it, but he
Did we ever figure out if the prince got consumed?
I'm pretty sure you asked that person a couple weeks ago, and he said he wasn't sure.
Yeah, my memory's bad there. I was always wondering about that.
That would be interesting. That would be neat.
Yeah, that was the route that character was set up to take.
Yes,
you know, I was laying the foundation, and he was loving the journey.
Then you told him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There a lot of the latest characters that we played. It's not kind of vibing for them.
Yeah, no, I can't really see Keith ever doing anything to that effect.
No, especially he probably wouldn't want the foresight of his sire.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Not to mention just the infighting that would bring in the clan.
Mm. Yeah. Different time. We'll talk about something later. It's not the time. It's ideas flow. The spice must flow.
Well, I think this is going to be a short one.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to cover.
Yeah, most of these topics,
the big details are going to be in the next podcast.
Yeah, most of these topics we want to go into and explore individually. This is kind of the basis of the whole podcast itself. We've spent 3 episodes really to get to this point where we can actually start picking topics and spending time on them.
Yeah.
As always, we appreciate those of you who are listening in on the ride with us through this journey through Vampire. We also probably appreciating all the hate mail and all the corrections that are being sent to me because we didn't do our due diligence, or we were talking about 30 years of information.
Yeah, and we mix stuff up. We're sorry, but you know, that's our headcanon.
Exactly. And sometimes we're going to do our best to try to separate that from the stuff we actually talk about.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're hoping that really this podcast will serve as a vehicle for beginners to kind of get into understanding these concepts, and to ultimately, when you sit down at the table and you pick up that character sheet, have a kind of an idea of what the fun you're going to have in this dark gothic world of a vampire.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you guys next time.
Bye.